Welcome to the Smart Business Revolution.
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 You want a revolution?
You say you want a revolution?
Revolution. The revolution.
It's going on right now.
Welcome to The Revolution, the Smart Business Revolution podcast, where we ask today's most successful entrepreneurs to share the tools and strategies they use to build relationships and connections to grow their revenue. Now, your host for The Revolution, John Corcoran.
All right, welcome everyone. John Corcoran here. I'm the host of this show. And if you are new to this program, go check out some of our archives because we had some great interviews recently, including with CEOs or founders of Grubhub. And we had Quicken recently, and we had Redfin recently. Of course, check out the archives. We got some great episodes with CEOs or founders of Netflix, Kinko's, YPO, EO, Activation Blizzard, Lending Tree, and many more. And I'm also the co-founder of Rise 25, where we help connect B2B business owners to their ideal prospects. My guest here today, his name is Matt Sunshine. He is managing partner at the Center for Sales Strategy. It's a sales performance company that helps sales organizations to attract, retain, and develop the highest performing salespeople. So if sales is something that you do, which is probably 100% of everyone who listens to this podcast, then you're going to want to listen to this because this is really his area of expertise: growing sales organizations, finding and developing sales superstars, sales process, who doesn't need help with that, lead generation, inbound marketing, digital marketing. There's actually a bunch of different divisions of the company, and we're going to talk about how he developed those different areas. He also developed and launched Lead G2, which is their inbound marketing company, which is a division in the company. And they also have a division called Up Your Culture, which is about the importance of employee engagement and how to increase that, which, again, another area that's important to talk about. And he's the author of Getting Prospects to Raise Their Hand, and Forbes Magazine lists Matt as one of the top 20 speakers you shouldn't miss the opportunity to see. In this episode, of course, brought to you by Rise 25, where we help B2B businesses to get clients, referrals, and strategic partnerships with Done For You podcasts and content marketing. You can go to our website at rise25.com or email us at support@rise25media.com if you want to learn all about it. All right, Matt, pleasure to have you here today. And we were chatting beforehand about this, and you, like I, had a career before you became an entrepreneur. Unlike my business partner, Jeremy, who went straight into entrepreneurship. I think the last time he actually got a paycheck and had a boss was like at 16 years old or something like that, which just kind of blows my mind. You, like me, you actually didn't start as an entrepreneur, but I want to go back to even before that. As a kid, were you doing anything entrepreneurial as a kid, like lemonade stands or anything like that, that kind of was a sign of your future where you are today?
Yeah, I absolutely was. I don't remember how old I was, but my neighbor and I started a lawn mowing service. I grew up in the Midwest, and back then, the way you got now there's like landscaping services. It's a big deal, but a long time ago, kids used to mow lawns.
Back in my day.
Right. I'm not that old, but it wasn't that long ago. But yeah, we used to mow lawns. We even we had flyers made up, and we'd go door to door and leave it on people's door. And I bet we built it up to, we had 6 or 7 lawns that we were mowing. And when you're getting $20, $25 a lawn that you're doing, that's pretty good money when you're 12 years old. And so so that was always something. And I always was a growth-minded type person. I always looked at businesses. My mom and dad owned their own businesses, and I would help out in that business. So I was always very entrepreneurial and always had that desire to own a business.
I'm always fascinated by that. Kids who are second-generation entrepreneurs, because I didn't have that experience. My parents weren't entrepreneurs. What kind of businesses did they have, and what did you do when you worked in them?
Yeah. So when I was a teenager, my dad was in the executive search, headhunter, executive search, and my mom owned they both owned, but my mom ran the temporary service. So we had permanent search and temporary search, and my mom ran the temporary search business. And in high school, I did outside sales for the temporary search firm, and it was great. That's hard selling, but
You're in high school, so were you knocking on doors? What were you doing?
I was
cold calling.
I was a junior in high school, and I was 16, 17 years old, and I was literally knocking on doors, giving a business card, introducing myself, telling about the company that I represented, trying to get appointments to come back and give a presentation. Yeah, I really was. I mean, I look back at it and go, I was 16 years old doing that, but I was. I mean,
Yeah,
my parents encouraged it.
It's crazy to me. I mean, did you like it?
I loved it. So what did I love? I love the presentations, and I love the making a sale, and I love growing the business. I will admit that, especially when I was 16, the idea of walking into a business and not knowing anybody was challenging at first, until I figured out a system to do it, which made it easier. When I got in the mindset that I wasn't walking in the door to do anything else than to find out who the decision maker was and to leave my business card, it became way easier. When I initially started and I thought my job was to try to walk in and make a sale,
right then
that was daunting. But when I broke it up into, the only thing I'm trying to do here is find out the name of the decision maker, leave my business card so I could follow up with a phone call. Sometimes the person would say, oh, that's me. What are you here for? And I'd have that conversation, but that made it better. That was probably the first time I understood that systems and process really help you to grow businesses.
I don't know what you looked like in high school, but I experienced plenty of rejection at my high school and with girls. So I didn't need any extra rejection in my life. So that's amazing that you did so well with it at a young age. Were there any mentors you looked up to at that period of time? Did your father help with the right mindset? Were you listening to a Tony Robbins or anything like that?
Yeah. So again, both my parents were very entrepreneurial and ran business, and were very pragmatic, optimistic for sure, but very pragmatic about this is what you need to do and this is how it works. And so, I guess I looked up to my parents and I saw them, but I also kind of saw it as it was family business, and it was kind of my way of contributing. And I think in my brain, at least at 16, I thought, and if I do a really good job, then after I graduate college, I'll just run this business. This will be my business. So it's kind of easier when it's your family's business, maybe, than just going and working for someone else.
It is interesting, though, because some people then have the opposite reaction. Sometimes it's a family business in an area that they're not interested in. They kind of discover that along the way, or they see their parents go through a lot of pain, or parents that operate a business that runs on the weekend or all the time, and they're stressed out by it. And so they end up, deciding, I'll never want to do this. The funny thing is, a lot of them come back later. Then, they go off, do something else, and then they come back and they run it later. I know a lot of people like that. For you end up going into sales as a profession, radio sales and media sales specifically. So you knew enough, you'd gotten enough exposure to sales to know that you wanted to pursue it professionally after you graduate.
Yeah, I really enjoyed it. So when I went to college, I joined a fraternity. In my fraternity, I was our rush chairperson, right? And when I joined the fraternity, my pledge class was like nine kids, and we had about 30 guys in the house. And by the time I left, the pledge classes were like 25 people, and we were on pace to have like 80 people in the house. and if you can convince somebody to join a fraternity, which is a forever commitment, then making sales is, just a one-time commitment, or, just an engagement. So I really did enjoy sales. I don't know if I originally intended to go into media sales. Somewhere along the way, maybe my junior year in college, a family friend actually ran radio stations. He was the CEO of what was a pretty large radio group back then. And he had mentioned something about radio sales or media sales. And honestly, I didn't know very much about what that was. And so he explained it to me, and I was like, that sounds really interesting. I could do that. I went to school at University of Missouri in Columbia, Missouri. And he said, and I grew up in St. Louis, and he said, I think I said to him, well, do you think I could just get a job in St. Louis when I graduate? And he said, well, you probably want to start in a small market. So he encouraged me to just go knock on the door of every radio and TV station in Columbia, Missouri, and convince somebody, those are his words, Matt, you just got to go convince somebody to give you a chance, give you a job. And that's what I did. I convinced a local owner of a local radio station to give me a shot in radio sales. I told them my pitch was, I will, I don't recommend saying this, but what I said
but
is,
nevertheless, do as I say, not as I do.
It worked for me. I said, I'll work for free. All you have to do is pay me commission. That part I thought was really good. And one guy said to me, well, why would you do that? And this is the part that I don't recommend. I said, well, my plan would be to work here for about 6 months so that then I could go into St. Louis and get a job in St. Louis.
Not a great one to say to a future employer. Yeah.
No, but he appreciated my candor and he said, I'm going to hire you and I'm going to hope that you have such a good experience working here that you won't want to leave in 6 months. I'll take that bet. And he was right. I ended up staying a year and 6 months before I moved on to Dallas and up and onward. Yeah.
Now you were in radio sales for quite a while, up through the mid 2000s, I think it was. And we'll get into how you became acquainted with Center for Sales Strategy. They were a vendor to you initially before you ended up joining up with them. That's a kind of an eternity in that period of time. There's a lot of change, I think, in the industry. Did you see a lot of change in terms of technology? Podcasting is starting to take root in that period of time, or any other, or streaming radio, any of that have an impact on the work that you did, or no?
Yeah, no, significant. So when I first got into radio sales, right in Columbia, Missouri, I immediately thought, what I want to do is learn every aspect of the radio station and then own a radio station. That was my parents had owned businesses. I kind of shared that. That's what I knew made sense to me. And I even talked to people and mentors of mine and said, hey, maybe in about 2 or 3 years after I kind of figure this whole thing out, would you mind investing? Would you consider investing? I started to have those conversations. When I moved to Dallas in 1990, early 90s, and certainly in 1996, deregulation happened in the media industry. And all of a sudden, the idea of owning one radio station or 2 radio stations became a little bit more complicated. And companies were coming in and buying multiple. And so, when I started, the most any one owner could own was 7 AMs and 7 FMs and no more than 2 in one city. Well, now you have markets where in your city, one company owns 7 radio stations, right? Mm-hmm. So everything started to change. That was one thing that changed. And then I started thinking, I don't know if I'm going to be able to own a radio station. Maybe I want to run one or run a group or be involved that way. The other thing is digital started to play and streaming audio. And I was fortunate enough for the company that I worked for. We were actually the very first radio station in America to stream audio. And so we were at the very beginning of that and we jumped on board and, it was one thing to do it and it was another thing to make money at doing it. And so, and I got to lead that effort and be a big part of putting the team together that would do that. It was exciting times and we didn't know what we were doing, but we were willing to take chances and that was fun. I enjoyed a lot of that.
Yeah, it's funny. I did college radio when I was in college. I had a radio show and all kind of stuff. My dad had been in radio, and so I was kind of interested in it. It was a lot of fun to do. I got up at like 5 a.m. on a Saturday morning, which, the way I would party the night before was not the best idea, but, and I remember this was like the mid 90s and it was all CDs throughout the station. I'm sure there isn't a single one left anymore. And there was like one machine that could play things digitally. And I think it had like 3 songs on it or something like that, but you could see that change starting to happen. Now, how did you become acquainted with the Center for Sales Strategy? Because you didn't found it. It had been founded by someone else, and you actually worked with them as a vendor.
Correct. Yeah. So I was in radio in Dallas, Texas, and the company that I had been named the group director of sales, recruitment, and training for the entire company. So we were in 7 cities. We owned 23 radio stations. We had about 100 salespeople across the company. And I thought that we were, the expression I somehow used, and I've said it a number of times, is I thought that we were accidentally good and I wanted us to be intentionally great. And here's what I meant by that. As radio was expanding, as companies were buying additional radio stations, someone once said to me, "Hey, Matt, you guys are really good at what you do. Do you think that if your company bought another radio station that you would be equally as good in that new radio station?" And that hit me hard. And I said, "No, I don't think so. I don't know if we have that repeatable, predictable system, process, that universal language that we use in every market, that we could have confidence that this market would do as good as this one." We were very autonomous. We made the same mistakes in all of our markets. We let every market be its own thing. And there's some charm in that for certain. I was on a hunt to put in systems and process and a common language. And so I went and I looked at all of the companies out there that did that. And what I really liked about the Center for Sales Strategy, and I knew about them because a previous person I had worked with had an experience of them consulting that company. What I really liked about the Center for Sales Strategy is that they had a complete system. And it wasn't that different than what I think our top performers knew to be truth. It was just, it put it in writing, it put it in words, it gave structure to what we all knew to be true. It wasn't like they came in and said, "Okay, we recommend this is how you do it," and everyone went, "Oh, well, that's totally different than what we currently do." It's almost like they came in, they said, "Well, this is what we recommend you do." We went, "Oh, we didn't call it that, but yeah, we do that." And all of a sudden, all of the markets started doing things the same way. We became intentionally great. And by having a system and a process in place, I started to feel really confident about spotting bottlenecks and opportunities to significantly grow the performance of the company. So yeah, I became a raving fan.
That's kind of shocking that they were able to come in. I mean, I would expect that in that kind of scenario, you have so many different operations operating independently, not the same way, that there would be a lot of friction with that, there's pushback. You see it in the movies all the time, right? Some outside consultant comes in, it's a room full of people, they're all distrust them, that kind of thing. What do you think it was that they were able to come in and they were able to establish it without a lot of friction?
Yeah, I think that if it was Dallas people telling the San Francisco people, "Hey, you should do it our way," that causes friction. The fact that it was an outside company that really understood the best practices of how to do it, we all kind of said, "Okay, well, hold on, let's take a look at that." The other thing is all of the CSS consultants had industry expertise at a really, really high level. So they came in with a lot of credibility. Not only was the system and the process credible because they could point to others that had used it and had success, but the person leading it and teaching it also had credibility to the point where you'd go, "Oh, that person kind of knows what they're talking about." So I can learn a little bit. And again, because it wasn't way different than what we were already doing, it just kind of gave us the recipe for what we were already doing.
Yeah.
We went from cooking by scratch to following a recipe.
Yeah. Now, I might be jumping a little bit ahead in the story here, but one thing that's fascinating to me, having listened to a couple of the interviews that you've done before, one was with our client Todd Taskey, Potomac Business Capital, Second Bite Podcast, who interviewed you, is that you've got incredible long-term clients that work with you for a long period of time. But the way that you just described what you just described, it sounded to me like, okay, that's like a 6-month engagement and then you're done.
Yeah.
But somehow you've managed to turn these into those long-term arrangements. So what's the secret there?
Yeah. Well, I can't tell you the secret. No, so
and that was a great show. Thanks everyone for joining us.
No, so we're real proud of that. I mean, we retain about 90% of our customers year in and year out, and some of our average client is with us just over 7 years, and so we have some clients that have been with us over 30 years, and we're celebrating our 40th birthday as a company in 2023. What's the secret?
That's phenomenal. I think the secret is grandfathering them in at $1.90 a month. I think that's probably what it was.
Yeah, I'll tell you the secret. The secret is this, that from the outside looking in, you might think of us as a sales training company or a management training company. And I think we thought of ourselves that way in the very beginning. And when you think of that, then once the training is done or the repeat training is done, you check that box and you move on. We back intentionally in around 2008, 2009 said that we are going to become a revenue company, that we're going to think of ourselves as a total revenue performance platform. That's what we do. We help businesses grow their revenue performance. And when you start thinking of yourself that way, the job is never done. So this year, it might be that you need help with your sales training, but in other years, it could be that you need help with your organizational structure or your compensation design or onboarding or succession planning or training of your future leaders, right? I mean, there's all sorts of things that you start paying attention to when you're focused on growing revenue versus do you want to implement our system?
Yep. Yeah. And of course, there's always a tension for any company between the idea of we're going to stay within our lane. This is what we do best, and hearing what the client needs. And maybe it's as you said, it moves from sales training to lead generation, to marketing, to culture. How have you decided when is the right time to jump into those areas and not jumped in too quickly? Or maybe you have in some instances.
Yeah, we've certainly made some mistakes along the way and tried some things that didn't work. So we're humming along as the Center for Sales Strategy, and we're getting great results. We're thinking of ourselves as a revenue company. We're helping our customers grow their business. We're becoming partners with our customers, not just vendors, which is really what we always strive to be. And we started hearing from our clients that the number one challenge that they were having was getting their salespeople getting appointments. It was just becoming harder and harder and harder. Well, a couple of years prior, we had started doing inbound marketing for ourselves. We started putting ourselves out there as thought leaders and doing lead generation and lead nurturing and sales enablement for ourselves. And so when we started hearing that this was a need from our customers in a bigger way than what we'd had in the past, we're like, well, I wonder if we should get in the business of helping our customers do what we do. And all of a sudden it's like, well, why wouldn't we do that? We know we've made all the mistakes. We made all the mistakes. We know how to do this. And so that's when we started Lead G2, our inbound marketing division. And, we've grown that division of the company successfully over 12 years. We're a Diamond HubSpot partner. I wrote a book on getting prospects to raise your hand because we knew that was important. Well, so fast forward and then, I'll pause a little bit on this part of the story, but we help our customers select the very best people. We give them the training, we give them the coaching, we help them with sales enablement and lead generation. We got all these systems and process, but if they're not engaged, if they don't like where they work, if they are, buzzword of the day, quiet quitting. But if all that's happening, it doesn't matter how good all those systems are, you need a really strong engagement. Well, we started looking at ourselves and go, we got 40 people that work for us. We're a 100% virtual company and have been forever. And yet we have some of the strongest engagement scores of any company around, super high. And we're like, well, what do we do? How do we make that happen? And so then we said, okay, well, we need to get in the business of engagement and helping people to up their culture. And that's where we created the Up Your Culture division, because the same way. So a lot of times it starts with us and learning on ourselves. And then we have to hear it enough from our clients. But these things don't become successful overnight. They take time.
Yeah. And while we're on the topic of employee engagement, this is a great one, because I literally was posting in a Slack community asking about this today, how to improve engagement. We're recording this at a strange time. This is the end of 2022. We're stepping back into the real world after 2 years of strangeness with the pandemic and everything. Lots of companies have got workforces that maybe were in person before, then they went totally distributed. Some people moved outside of their geographic region. Now there's these weird hybrid things going on. Talk to me a little bit about what you see working. What is the key for good employee engagement as we head into 2023?
Yeah, great question. So we did a survey recently, and I don't have the data in front of me, but when you ask leadership, how important is getting everyone back in the office, those scores are significantly higher than when you ask the people, how important is it to you to get back in the office? Those scores are way lower. And so there's this chasm happening. The workers are saying, I don't feel like we need to go back in. And the leaders are saying, I think I need you to be back in. What we think are some of the most important things, and I'm pulling something up on my computer because I want to reference it, is that you really have these 4 things in place. And the first thing is, we call them the 4 engagement elevators. And they're shared mission, people development, valued voice, and earned trust, right? When those 4 things are in place, you have the foundation of a really stronger engagement. Unfortunately, what people think of as engagement is Friday happy hours, or I had someone, seriously, I'm not kidding, say to me, we're thinking that we're going to put a cereal bar in because that'll get people to come in the office. That'll help with engagement. I said,
I had to be in Silicon Valley, right?
Yeah. I said, I don't know if that's true. I said, I think people that like cereal and already like coming into the office will really like that. Other than those people, I don't know if that causes good engagement.
Yeah.
So to us, good engagement is, are you sharing the mission with everybody? Is everyone on board? Does everyone know where you're going? And is it clearly stated? And are you committed to people development? Are you committed to hiring the right people? I heard a quote, and I think I might be wrong, but I think it was from the guy that owns or started Chick-fil-A, where he said, people that consider themselves to be a 9 or a 10 like to be surrounded by others that are 9s and 10s. But people that consider themselves to be like a 6 like to be surrounded by people that are like 3, 4s, and 5s. And if you're committed to hiring the right people who want to be surrounded by other people that are of excellence, that helps grow the organization. And then valued voice, in other words, not that everyone has a vote, but everyone does have a voice, and that we want you to contribute, and we want to hear what you're thinking, and that matters to us. And then earn trust, just the fact that you got to work at it, right? You got to earn. You don't just get trust because your title says you should be trusted.
Yeah,
you earn the trust.
Yeah, it's interesting because I don't know if you've experienced this, but as you roll out these new initiatives, sometimes you go into this space of feeling a lot less uncomfortable, especially you've been doing what you've been doing for a long period of time, and you've mastered it, it ins and outs, answer the questions, you help the clients with it, and then you have something new like this here, right? New structure. new deliverables, all that kind of stuff. Have you experienced that as you've rolled out these new divisions within the company where all of a sudden you're like, oh my God, I don't feel so comfortable with this anymore. Or maybe your team members do.
Oh, absolutely. And I think that you got to be, allow yourself to be a little vulnerable, right? And to share the fact that we don't know if this is exactly correct and we're going to give it a shot. And you know what, if we're not doing it right, we're also going to have the sense and the confidence to say, you know what, we're going to pivot a little bit. We're going to adjust. We thought our initial way that we were going to do inbound marketing for clients, the initial way that was my idea was we were just going to tell people how to do it. We're going to be their consultant. We're going to tell them, here's what you got to do. And 100% of the customers that we took on, we would tell them what to do and none of them did it.
Yeah.
And they weren't getting results because they weren't doing it. And so we had to have a conversation internally and say, okay, this isn't working. We need to get in the business of doing it for them because just telling them they need to do it isn't working. So you got to be vulnerable. You got to be okay with saying, you know what, we need to change this up a little bit. But yeah, of course you have those feelings. Of course.
Exactly how we got into what we do as well is just like saying to people, here, you should do this, and saying like, yeah, I don't know. I don't know if I can do it, and seeing no one actually following through with it. Let's talk about, so how did you go from, this is fascinating to me, to go from using CSS, your company, as a vendor to then joining as an owner?
Yeah. So here's the story. So first, there was an opening at CSS for someone in their talent department, and the talent department is working with talent assessments and helping to select the very best people. That while I was a client of CSS, I saw the opening and I told my wife, I said, hey, I think this would be a perfect job for you. And she applied for it and got the job. So I kind of knew what it was like to work at CSS because I had been watching it from the outside for a couple of years while she was there. But then what happened to me specifically is I always liked the idea of CSS. I was enamored. I was a raving fan of the company, but I was really happy where I was. The company I was working for sold in 2006. It was a privately owned company. It'd been in the guy's family for 65 years. He was successful, sold it for $1.2 billion. That's a B.
Too shabby.
Yeah, not too shabby. Good day for his family.
Yeah.
And he sold it. And on that day is when I decided, the guys at CSS came to me and said, would you like to come to work here? And I said, I really would. And someday, because that got me thinking when I knew my company was for sale, I started thinking, do I want to start my own business? Is this the time now to start my own business? And then I saw CSS. I was like, really like what those guys do. I like their mission. I like their vision. And I even said to them that, if I come to work here, is there going to be an opportunity for me to grow and maybe one day, if things all work out, even buy the company and run it? And they were like, sure, can't promise you anything, but yeah, that would be there. And so that's what allowed me to go there and why I was excited to do it.
And does your wife still work there?
She does. And if she was here right now, she'd remind everyone that she's worked for the company for 2 years longer than I have.
What is it like going from newbie at the company that your wife works to then working your way up and then acquiring the company and becoming your wife's boss?
Yeah, that's something, right? Thankfully, my wife and I started dating while we were in college and have been married a really, really long time.
30 years. Congratulations.
Yeah, absolutely. And so we actually worked great together. And it was, while I was new to the company, I was as an employee, I was not new to the company as I'd been a client for 10 years and had a whole lot of confidence and comfort with everybody there.
Yeah. What was your relationship like with the founders as you went in from vendor to the company to then working as an employee for the company to then buying in as an owner of the company? Was there any tension at any point in that relationship or? No,
quite the opposite. I am so fortunate. The founder of the company is a gentleman named Steve Marks. He's passed away. And I will tell you, Steve was a mentor of mine, and I shared that with him. He was a mentor of mine before I came to work at the company. I just thought his ability or his constitution to always doing the right thing was so impressive to me that he would put his employees and the reputation of the company before a dollar, right? Before making money, it was do the right thing. And I always really, really respected that he was so true to the core values of the company. And so no, when there wasn't any tension, as he was he was 21 years older than me. And then his next in line was another gentleman who is also a mentor of mine that I just have a tremendous amount of respect for, who was about 14 or 15 years older than me. So I was very fortunate in that the way the ages stacked up, I was in line for succession planning the right way.
Mm. And you've been managing partner as your title now since about 2015. Of course,
Yes.
About 5 years into that, we have COVID that hits. I love to ask them, I guess, about that. What was that like for you? This is, I guess, 5 years into owning a company. So it's not exactly, it was like year one, but what was that like for you? Were there moments of, oh crap, in March of 2020, where you're like, oh crap, what's going to happen here?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. So I bought into the company in 2015. And for the most part, prior to March of 2020, our CSS consultants, that division of the company, the consultants were in an airplane every week. Each consultant probably traveled about 130,000 miles a year on their airline of choice. So we did a lot of travel, and a lot of the revenue that we earned came from us being in your office delivering something.
I can see why that would frighten you. Then if all of a sudden it's like, oh, we can't travel.
And the way it happened, I guess the basketball game was canceled on a Thursday, and then the next day something else canceled, and we were all texting and calling each other and saying, what are you hearing? People are like, I'm good, I'm getting on a plane Monday, and other people are like, my client just called and canceled. And I called a meeting for the following week of a kind of our leadership team, and I said, we need to assume that we'll never get into a plane again. And how are we going to operate our business if we never are allowed to get in a plane again? Let's imagine. I said, because our clients that we serve need us more now than ever before, because they're dealing with stuff too. Mm-hmm. And so they need revenue performance in spite of all this. So at the exact same time that we're being challenged with not being able to get to markets is the exact same time when our clients need us the most. So how should we deliver service if we never get in an airplane again? And I will tell you, the team was brilliant. We came up with ideas that we're still using today now that we are back to doing some traveling, but we're not traveling as much because we don't need to. I would never have guessed it, but I think it was the best thing to ever happen to our business because we became better at what we do.
It's really interesting how many companies say that where travel was absolutely integral to their business before, and now they like it. They like, well, I don't need to travel as much as I did. I can when I want to, but I don't need to as much as I was before.
Yeah, the biggest thing for us is let's say you were a client of ours and you were having a challenge. And so you might call up and say, hey, I'm having this challenge and need you to come in. And so we'd say, okay, great. And we'd say, let's look at calendars. And we'd say, okay, 6 weeks from now, I can be there on Thursday, 6 weeks from now, 7 weeks from now. And you would say, okay, but then you'd still have that problem for 6 or 7 weeks.
Yeah.
Now you call and we say, okay, well, let's get on a Zoom call or let's get on a Teams meeting tomorrow, Monday. Just so much better, so much better.
We're running a little short on time here, and so we'll wrap it up in a moment. But first, I'd like to ask people about what are they most excited about now as we come out of this weird phase in time. It seems like over the last so many years, you've added different divisions to the company, so that makes it a very different company from what it was even 6-10 years ago. What are you most excited about?
Well, like I said earlier, I'm a growth-minded person. And to me, the opportunity to grow the company and really expand on that total revenue performance platform is exciting to me. Continuing to watch Lead G2 grow, continuing to really excited about the growth of Up Your Culture and employee engagement. But I'm also in acquisition mode. I'm also looking to expand our services, because if you're going to be a total revenue performance platform, you should have lots of services that companies, and we work in the B2B world, B2B companies that are trying to grow their revenue performance say, oh, you know what? I should come to these guys because they can do that. I'm so excited about that. I think it represents the biggest opportunity for this company to have a tremendous amount of success, but also so that we can continue to serve our clients. They expect this from us. And I'm super excited about that.
You mentioned, I think his name was Steve Marks earlier, the founder of Center for Sales Strategy, as someone who has a big influence on you. I love to ask my guests as we wrap things up about, or I'd love to share my passion for expressing gratitude, especially to those who helped you along the way. If you had to pick out a few, who would you want to acknowledge?
Yeah, so Steve would definitely be on that list. Even when I was just a client of the Center for Sales Strategy, he always found time for me when I needed it. There were some other people. I had a gentleman that was my boss for 14 years. His name was Dan Halliburton, and he cared about me. Right? It doesn't mean that he didn't hold me accountable. It doesn't mean that he didn't sometimes, have to, point me in the right direction. But he did that because I know he cared about me, and I try to give that back to people too. Right? But I look at those two people that probably I worked with the longest, that I had the biggest influence on me, and it was more about the way they treated people, the way they cared about people, and the way that they focused on growing and developing others versus growing and developing themselves, which has made the biggest and most lasting impression, and something that I try to do for others around me as well.
Yeah, Matt, this has been great. Where can people go to connect with you, reach out, ask any questions, getting more information about what you guys do?
Yeah, so you can always go to the centerforsalesstrategy.com. You can go on LinkedIn, and it's Matt Sunshine, and that's the easiest way. There's not very many Matt Sunshines, so it's pretty easy to get a hold of me. But happy to do that, or my email address is mattsunshine@csscenter.com, and I'm happy to have a one-on-one conversation with anyone that enjoys this topic. Love to have those conversations.
Matt, thanks so much.
You got it.
Thank you for listening to the Smart Business Revolution podcast with John Corcoran. Find out more at smartbusinessrevolution.com. And while you're there, sign up for our email list and join the revolution. Revolution. And be listening for the next episode of the Smart Business Revolution podcast.